This is a recap of what we did yesterday. If you remember, yesterday we were able to describe what research is. We said it has two main very important characteristics. It should be scientific and it should be systematic. And then we were able to also explain what validity and reliability in research is. In fact, we took the chance to, let's get there, we took the chance to, before that, we talked about a topic and the attributes of a good topic. We talk about the fact that a topic should have 4 or more principles that should guide one to develop a topic, of which Dr. Malcolm yesterday gave us another insight to it in terms of the data we would want to collect, and that if you're doing a secondary data, make sure that you have a baseline, and that baseline should not be less than 5 years. So once you have the baseline, you can draw some inferences and compare to the present, and that was a very insightful, contribution. So we said that these 4 principles, one, and a topic was defined as a subject area you want to investigate. And we indicated that your topic should evolve as you learn about it. You don't start research by just having something in mind that I want to do this. You just have to read what others have done, and then that will give you a fair view of what you want to do. It is not wrong conceptualizing something or working with a project for a very long time. You want to study about it, but if you want the thing to be scientific, you want it to be acceptable, because you are not living in a closed world. The world is open. So you would want to see what others have done. So as you read, you learn about the topic and it evolves, okay? And then we also indicated that find a topic that you can add your own ideas. We also said that, and the ideas will be based on the experience you've had in the industry and all that. And that takes us to the third one, leverage on the experience in the field of study to add some ideas to your topic, which is good. You might be working in a department for maybe so many years and might have learned about something that you're doing. But what you can do is to look at what others have done, and then you also add your ideas. Knowing very well that research is a kind of a building block that we described yesterday. Others have done something, you go there, see what they've done, see the gaps, and see how you can fill the gap. And then we also indicated that consider topics proposed in future studies. And that gets us to, in most papers or publications, the limitation of the study and future direction. And that is a requirement for every paper. They would indicate the state the limitation of the study. So it can guide others. If we know this is the limitation, then we can leverage on what you have proposed for future study. In fact, most studies, they have future studies topics proposed there, and you can just go and then pick them. So if you are thinking of how to develop a topic, look at it from that perspective. Then we came to the mind map. We made mention of the fact that the mind map is a strategy that you can use to scale or scope your research. And if you do this thing very well, the fact of the matter is that you might have completed about 20% of the work that you want to do in your thesis. And you could conceptualize anything, any word, any term, in any discipline, and then put it in the middle. In this case, we have drug abuse among teens as the concept the person has, and then you begin to ask, who are you dealing with if you are dealing with teens, and who relates to the population? And then you can also talk about when relates to the period that you want to do the study, whether it's in time past, whether it's present, whether it's future. And this is where Dr. Malcolm gave us an insight that if it is in time past and you're leveraging on secondary data, make sure that that data, you're using it as a baseline, and that it is not less than 5 years, okay, so that you can do some sort of impact, study. And then we also made mention of what. So here In other models, they segregate or they break the what into two, the first level and the second level. You can do that if you want to go that way. But if you look at this model, we are looking at what is asking that if you are dealing with just the drug abuse, or you want to look at prevention, you want to look at substance abuse, addiction, alcohol abuse in that order. You realize that these things can also give you another layer that you can look into. You might realize that the concept you pick is very big. So you might want to scale it down. And then the last one is, the last but one is when, sorry, where relates to whether the thing is done at the rural areas. We are doing it at the rural area, and where it has to do with the geographical location, urban, whether you want to do it in the whole country, or better still, West Africa, Africa, or wherever you want to, do this. So it tells you the geographical location. And we did indicate that here also that if your work covers a wider range, it helps acceptability most of the high impact journals, because they may want a study that can have a more global sense than those ones that are limited to an area. So we made mention of that. And the last one was the how, where we also indicated that this has to do with methodology. So the methodology, which research approach would you want to use, whether qualitative, quantitative, or mixed? Which research design, whether it's exploratory, descriptive, or explanatory. These are the three big layers that under which you can have sub research designs. Or which method of data analysis are you going to use? Are you going to do primary data or secondary data? Are you going to do a mix? Or you're going to do some sort of observation or whatever. You want to build a model from scratch. These has to be indicated. And the last one is the data analysis, how data will be analyzed. The approach will determine how the data will be analyzed. If it's qualitative, you know that kind of tools to use. Quantitative, the kind of tools, makes the kind of tools. So we made mention of this yesterday, just to give you some context, those who just joined. And then we also indicated that you can have this in a tabular form. If it's in a tabular form this way, it makes things easy for you. For instance, if you chose drug abuse, when in time past, if that is what you are looking at, where rural, who, teenagers, how, the research approach, you can indicate research design in that order. Now you can use this as a caveat to now check on papers that have been done, and then you take advantage of it. You look at the limitation of the study and you see how to align. If the study had done, most papers that you have looked at had done something relative to drug abuse, but they didn't do it in rural areas, they did it in other jurisdictions, then you can have a geographical gap. Okay, so that's how we establish the gap. We talked about this yesterday, so this is just a recap. And then we talked about also issues about validity, what it is. We said validity relates to the instrument, reliability relates to what? The results. We did quite some discussions about this. Also spoke about validity in the sense of the whole research, the alignment of the variables of the topic, the description of them in the problem statement in a manner that describes the problem very well and identify the gaps, justify the need for the study, and how we draw objectives out of a problem statement, convert them to research questions, hypothesizes them. We talked about how research questions, how literature review should be conducted in a manner that, as it were, it aligns with, in a manner that aligns with the research questions. We talked about that as well. And then we also looked at the kind of methodology you should use, because if you did the review well, you would have realized that you can get some methodological gaps, or some empirical gaps, or some theoretical gaps, and then you will use those methodologies, the appropriate methodologies to fill that gap. For instance, if the study had indicated that they had an issue with very low sample size, then in your study, you can increase the sample size to fill that gap. And then we have the findings and the recommendations that will come as a result of the right instrument and the right procedures being used. And then we talked about the Shipman's 4 key questions about research. We talked about these things and then dealt with it extensively. So what I want us to do today here is that I'm going to just finish that part of the validity, bring some issues to bear, and then just go to this common SPSS. I wanted to use Excel, but I'll use XPSS to just see how we can measure, for example, construct validity. Okay, one of the validity issues. We see how we can measure them. So that we have this in a practical manner. And to begin with today's studies, we have said that most students fail to answer the question, why do you think your research is valid or reliable? That question remains unanswered. And we have said a number of times that if your thesis, if you go for review and they say that your topic is not appropriate, it boils down to validity and reliability. That's all they are telling you. The topic is not properly structured, and we don't believe that the results that you churn out, can be reliable. That's what we are saying. In other words, we are saying that the instrument or the technique that you used to draw the topic, to establish your problem, to derive your target, that is the objectives, to create your research questions, to hypothesize the research questions, the procedure you use for your literature review, and also the methods you use to collect and analyze data. And these things are inappropriate. And for that matter, the results, your findings cannot be relied on. So that is, at the heart of research. And that story is not told. It is not taught anywhere. And you need to figure out. And I don't know whether you have the challenge of your supervisor telling you that the problem statement is not good, but yet is unable to tell you what is specifically to do to correct that. Okay, so it becomes an issue. Some supervisors, like the life of Dr. Malcolm, will go down and tell you what to do. If you have mastered this thing for a very long time. So we look at validity from that perspective. So I just want to run through this. There are a lot of them. I'll share the slide, but I don't want to go more into detail so we don't exceed the time. But validity is the best available approximation to the truth of a given proposition, inference, and conclusion. So in research, when we are looking at validity, we are looking at validity to answer these questions. And the questions are cumulative. It starts from the down. And we say that, is there a relationship between the cause and effect? If you were establishing the relationship between one variable and the other, like yesterday, we talked about COVID-19 and employees' performance. One of the questions that we'll ask is that, is there a relationship between COVID-19 and also employee performance? I can see a hand up. That is Mr. Dente. Mr. Dente, you want to draw our attention?
Sorry, it was, I am with you already. Okay. Yesterday I was with you, but today I joined late. I was having challenges with my PC. Okay. But it is yesterday one you are talking. I don't know whether you are repeating what
I'm not repeating. Yesterday. We have now started. I'm not repeating. We have not started. Okay. I gave a background of what happened yesterday. A quick recap of what happened.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So we want to continue from here. So if the topic is about the relationship between establishing the effect of COVID-19 on employee performance, for instance, then the conclusion, the validity here, which is the conclusion validity, which starts from the down, okay, or the bottom, is that, is there a relationship between the cause and effect is there. At the end of the research, we should be able to establish that. Now, the next block is the internal validity. Then we ask the question, is the relationship causal indeed? Now, sometimes there's a relationship, let me say that there's a relationship between COVID-19 and employee performance. There exists a relationship, but COVID-19 is not the cause of low or high employee performance. In other words, it is not the performance of employees, it's not being pushed or caused by the activities of what COVID-19, to the extent that if there is no COVID-19, there wouldn't be employee performance, or there will be employee performance. So you could have a relationship between two variables that is not causal, but they do have the relationship. So that is what is asking, that is the relationship causal or not? If it is causal, then a change in one variable should lead to a corresponding increase or decrease on the other variable, okay? It should be something that is affecting it, and that's not what, if you're doing correlation, you're looking at. But here is real causality, and that goes into the region of regression, okay? So the other third one is construct. Construct, it said, can we generalize the constructs that we used? In other words, let me give you an example. You have, we do this aptitude test, some tests for IQ. And there are some question items. You answer about 10 or 15 items, and they tell you your IQ is 6 or 7, or maybe 50% or 60%. How do they determine that? What it means is that those items, question items of 10 or 15 you answer, it's enough to measure the construct IQ, right? And that those constructs can be generalized anywhere. If those constructs can be applied anywhere, then we say there is what? Construct validity. So the items that you use, the questions, the individual questions that you answer, that measures your IQ, is what we are talking about. Is there any problem? Hello? Are we there? Hello?
Yes, we are here.
Yeah, we are here.
Hello? We are
Yes,
here.
we are here.
Okay. So that is it. So that is construct validity. Then the last one is external validity. Can we generalize to other persons, places, or times? And the external validity, yesterday we talked about it. We said that it is mostly related to the sample that we chose. Okay, and here we are neck deep into what? Quantitative study. The sample that we chose, can we generalize it? Is it generalizable? So that talks about what? The external validity. And that is why when you are picking your sample, you have to be very careful. Is it enough to generalize the entire population? That is very, very, important. So that is it. So that talks about this is about the validity issue we're talking about. I don't want to take you deep into this, but let's look at the 4 types of validity. Okay, the broad ones. Now we are saying that there are 4 types of validity. Okay, and they build on one another, like I indicated, with 2 of them: conclusion and internal validity, referring to the land of observation. That's how they call it. So it says, for example, if we want to examine whether the use of internet improves student understanding of a course material, what we might do is to, take this route. We might assume that we took these two constructs, the course construct, that internet, and the effect construct as what? Understanding. And then operationalize them, turn them into realities by constructing, for instance, the internet site and then a measure of knowledge of the course material. When we do that, then we can just say that, okay, does the use of the internet improves student understanding of what the course material? Then we would want to do that. So you see, the conclusion and internal validity is the first and second building block. In other words, the construct validity and external validity might not be effective or might not work if we don't have the foundation, that is the conclusion validity, because we want to understand if the relationship between these two variables, the cause and effect, if they really exist. If it is, then we don't have any issue. So conclusion validity is this, in this study, is there a relationship between the two variables? So conclusion validity is the degree to which conclusions we reach about relationship in our data are reasonable. They are reasonable, okay? And I don't want to go, if you talk about internal validity, we are saying that assuming that there's a relationship in the study. Now, conclusion is done. There is a relationship. He's asking a question. Is the relationship what? Causal? In other words, if there is no conclusion, we cannot move to what? The causal one. That is what? The internal validity. There has to be what we have set out to do. There have to be that evidence of that happening. If your study said you want to investigate the impact of COVID-19 on employee performance, what we would ask is that, what was the impact? What was the cause, and what was the impact? We want to know. If there is none, then it means there will be no internal validity, there will be no construct validity, and also external validity. So that is very, very, important. So we are saying that internal validity is the approximate truth about the inference regarding the cause, effect, or causal relationship. Okay, so we are saying that just because we find that the use of internet science and knowledge are correlated, we can't necessarily assume that the internet site use causes knowledge. This is what I spoke about earlier on. We cannot conclude. The fact that there's relationship doesn't really mean there's causality, okay? So both could, for example, be caused by the same factor. For instance, it may be that wealthier students who have greater resources will be more likely to use or have access to the internet site and would excel on objective tests. And when we want to make a claim that our program or treatment caused the outcome in our study, we can consider the internal validity of our causal claim. So the claim that there's causality is very, very important. And let me indicate this. My boss is here. He might even talk about this. Most time, and he spoke about it yesterday. Most times what we do as researchers, that our topic is assessing the effect of the impact of one variable on the other. Okay, that's what we say. And then we are saying that we are assessing the impact, yet we do not have secondary data to measure as a baseline to measure our impact. Okay, that is not there. And Dr. Malcolm talked about it yesterday. So if there's no baseline, you look at the topic, you see that there's a problem, because if you say impact, the conclusion validity will be that, was there really an impact? Was there really an impact, and what caused it? Once you've not been able to establish that, the other levels of validity doesn't make sense. Okay. And then the third one is the construct validity. And we are saying that assuming that there's a causal relationship in this study, can we claim that the program reflected well our construct of the program and that our measure reflected well our idea of the construct of that measure? And I give you an example. I have items that are measuring intelligence. The question is, those 10 items or 15 items, are they really measuring the IQ? They've done this thing over time. And that's why today you can go to the internet and then do an IQ test. And you can say with some level of margin of error, error of margin, that, okay, your intelligence is maybe 56% with an error of margin of maybe 5% or 1%. You understand? Because those constructs reflect well, those items reflect well the construct. It measures the construct. And that's what we will be doing the practice on construct validity. And then external validity is how we can generalize. And I talked about what? The sample. And here we are saying that assuming that there is a causal relationship in the study between the construct of the cause and the effect, can we generalize this effect to other persons or places or times? External validity is related to generalization. And that is a major thing we need to keep in mind. Recall that validity refers to the approximate truth of the what? Preposition, inferences, and conclusion. So if you are looking at external validity, let's have in mind that our sample size should be enough to represent the population. That is why in qualitative study, you cannot do qualitative study and say you are generalizing what? The result, because it will serve as just the foundation of the research. Other researchers will, if it's a model you develop, they will pick on the model and then they take it out from there. So what I want to do now is not to take you into these complexities. I'm going to give you the, for instance, the slides so that we go with this. But there's something I'll draw your attention to when we are done with the whole thing. There are other types of validity, and this is just about reading. I don't want to read these things. I mean, content validity, we have test validity, construct validity is already here. We have content and phase validity. It's interesting. Phase validity, and then other ones. Okay, criterion, concurrent, predictive. These are all types of validity, and I'll make the lecture notes available to you. Okay, so I want us to note this point whilst we go to the practical aspect. So we are saying that for any inference or conclusion, there are always possible threats to validity. The conclusion could be that if I said I was measuring an effect of something, the conclusion would be that there was really an effect. And you see, when you see these big guys who sit on the panel, that they will ask you one question. They will not be too technical. You said you were measuring the effect of COVID-19 on employee performance. Did you find that? If they ask you that question, did you find that? Then they are referring to your conclusion or conclusion what? Validity. Because you see, in research, we take a topic, we identify gaps as problem. We set targets, objectives. We ask questions out of the objective, which should be answered. And those questions we ask, we look for literature that relates to those questions. And then we review them to consolidate the gaps in the problem statement. In some instances, we hypothesize these questions. Now, when we are done with this, then we use the appropriate method to collect and analyze the data. When we finish and we have the findings, we would have to conclude that the problem that we sought to solve, which is the topic that has been expanded or explained in the problem statement, which we have set target for, we should be able to conclude that we were able to find that or not. Because if you said the effects of COVID-19 on employee performance. What it means is that previous literature has indicated that there is some sort of effect. And there are studies, a number of studies that have confirmed that. So if you are really investigating that, we want to find out whether that effect, you were able to find it. And that is what the panel members are likely to ask you. And if you did not find the effect, then what prompted you to do the study? If it was not there, what prompted you to do the study? You understand? Because there's enough evidence to show that there is. If there is not, then they will suspect of validity issues. Then the question is which methodology you use, the sample size, whether you have issues with administering that instrument, or even measuring construct validity and other types of validity. So you need to look at that. He said ideally, one tries to reduce the plausibility of the most likely threats to validity, and thereby leaving as most plausible the conclusion reached in the study. Now, for instance, imagine the study examine whether there is a relationship between the amount of training in a specific technology and subsequent rates of use of the technology. Because the interest is in relationship, it is considered as an issue of conclusion validity, because it's about what? Relationship. Okay. Now, so let's do something. I'm gonna move to SPSS. And for us to look at something. Okay. So I'm going to show you this data. This is one of the data sets, we are using for a particular study. And we want to make sense of the issue of construct validity, which we talked about. Because conclusion validity really is going to make sure that the findings that we got, if we're measuring some sort of relationship, that relationship exists. If it doesn't, then we have an issue. Let me just show you the paper that we are dealing with. What the topic is all about, if you can see. So the topic, please, can you see? I want to make sure. Please, can you see the?
Yes, Doc. Okay. Yes, Doc, we can see.
Yes, we can see.
The topic is factors influencing employees' intention to participate in a bring your own device. We call it BOYOD in the workplace. It says that it's a correlational study. A correlational study. So if it's a correlational study, then he's looking at what? Relationship between those variables. He needs to also go, that will be the conclusion validity. The next stage is that relationship what? Causal. And then the third one will be that if it is causal, those constructs, can we generalize those constructs? Can we do that? If that is done, the next thing is that, can we, external validity, can we, the findings that we have drawn out of the study, can we generalize it? That is the next level. So what I'm going to, do is to look at how we can measure construct validity. So this is the data set, a Likert scale data set. Now, the model we are dealing with, which I will show you, so that we put this in a proper perspective. The model we are dealing with is this. Please, can you see it? Is this. There's the model. Can you see?
Yes, Doc.
So we are saying that this is UTOT. UTOT, I mean, construct. UTOT, the full meaning is here, is Unified Technology Acceptance Model. I mean, we had the first level and the second level. We have the UTOT and the UTOT2. The first level had only performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, and facilitating condition. And then the two brought hedonic motivation, price value, and then habits. Okay. So this is the construct. So what we are seeking to look at whether performance expectancy can predict behavioral intentions to use what? Technology. Okay. Or effort expectancy. In other words, this study is looking at these variables and their relationship, whether there's a correlation between them and then behavioral intention to adapt or to use technology. All right. And then they've got some mediating factors here. We are not interested in that. But let's see that the measure of, let's say, performance expectancy in terms of measuring the construct, if we can measure it, if that construct can be measured, if we're able to measure the construct performance expectancy, then it means that, okay, we have passed what? The construct validity, that test. The other test is that whether it can what? Be replicated. We can generalize it. So there's the internal construct validity and the external construct validity where you have applied it. And let me say this. Venkatash, the guy who developed this model, has been able to test it and establish that there is construct validity. So when you do yours, use the same construct, it's expected that you find something similar. So something like performance expectancy has questions, okay? And the questions are the data items that you are going to answer, agreed, disagreed, and all that. And that is what I wanted you to see this. And that is what we have in the SPSS. This is it. So if you pick performance expectancy, they've asked 4 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then effort expectancy, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to measure construct validity. Okay. Now, the first thing we would do is this. We would want to look at the factor loadings of these constructs. We call it the component loadings. And don't worry about it because I'm using that to illustrate something. Those factor loadings, we will take them and go to Fuel and Lacker's framework for measuring validity, which he calls it construct validity, which is he calls it average variance extracted. Okay, variance is simply the spread of what? The data. If you remember at P5, P4, when we're doing frequency, when we finish and then we do the tally, we add all of them, okay, and then we divide it by what? The number of, in fact, we deduct, this is what we do. When we get those figures, we deduct it from the mean, okay? We deduct the mean from it. We add all, and then the figure we will get, based on the whatever formula you are using, you divide it by n or n minus 1. Okay, there are 2 formulas to that. So that becomes what the variance, the spread. And if the variance, the spread is more dispersed, it doesn't give you that accuracy of what your standard deviation. It means that, I mean, there are more scattered data. If it's more condensed, it is better. So when I talk about average variance extracted, all we are saying is the amount of variance that was accounted for in that sample, okay? And that is the basis that we use, that is what Funnel and Lacker have used to determine validity of what? A construct. And that's what we are going to do. So we are going to pick performance expectancy, effort expectancy, this 4, and then put them in something we call principal component analysis. Forget about that. All that we are looking for is the loadings. And we are going to use the loadings to establish the average variance extracted. And then whilst we have done that, then we come to our example. Once we get that, then we see how to measure the, construct validity. So, I'm going to do this pretty fast. So I'm going to analyze, and I'm going to dimension reduction. Okay, that's where you have the factor analysis. So there's the factor, there's a dimension reduction, the factor analysis dialog box. Let me do that again because you're going to use the video. You go to analyze and then you go to dimension reduction. So this is it. All that I'm going to do is to pick performance expectancy, effort expectancy, performance expectancy 1, 2, 3, 4, which are 4 questions. And then the effort expectancy 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And I'm going to move them here. I'm not going to do anything complex. I'm not going to add anything to these. Probably, let me check the KMO, Kaiser-Meyer, Oakland test, and Butler test. Forget about what it is. I will explain it. And then leave this thing and then click OK. When I click OK, what I'm going to have is this. Okay, so we have KMO 0.92. KMO measures whether your data, the data set qualifies for the principal component analysis. Principal component analysis is a data reduction technique. So with those items, it will be able to tell us that, you can prune the data, this construct, maybe 4 or 5. You can prune them to about 3 if they are not able to measure the construct very well. Where my interest is, let's forget about all this. And of course, the Butler test of sphericity, which is like what we call the significance level in the case of we doing normal research, is showing 0.000, meaning that this is less than 5%. It means that KMO has given us a high number. Some artists have said that KMO of 50% and above is good. So this means that the data fits the model. Where my interest is this. So we are going to the component matrix here, right? We are going to the component matrix. So these are the factor loadings, right? These are the factor loadings. And this is what we are going to use, as a matter of fact, for our AVG. So I want you to do me something good. Can someone type all these values on the chart for us? Who can do that for us? Are we all here? Are we live?
Yes, Doc, we are live.
Good. Who can do this for me? Let's do this pretty short, fast, because I want us to I don't want us to be talking about the theory aspect, but I just want us to make this more practical. If you can can someone type it straight for us? Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to just copy. Good. Now, if we were using, let's say, Smart PLS, or we're using Stata, which I have here, we may not need to do what I'm going to do. But if you're using XPSS, SPSS doesn't have a component. I don't know if the new model has it, to measure average variance extracted and composite reliability. Our focus is on AVG. So Fennell and Lacker has proposed something in Excel. All right. And what they've done in Excel is just to, it's a formula, just to put the components in. This one is how many components we are dealing with? 8, right? So if you are looking at the Excel sheet, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let me see, let me take this thing off. If it is 8, let me see if I can put this in. Okay, this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is it 6 or 8? Is it 6 or 8? Oh, I missed some of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it's left with 1. Or hello, are we there?
Yes, Doc. Yeah, there is a figure that is missing. 0.899 is supposed to be repeated.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Which one?
0.899 is supposed to be twice.
0.899.
It's supposed to appear twice. Yes.
0.899. Okay, so but then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it was supposed to be 8 or 1.
The first one is 0.866.
0.866. So 0.866.
0.866.
Okay.
Yeah, the first.
So immediately, this is what we have.
No,
Are you seeing the AVG? Are you seeing the AVG? Hello?
Yes, Doc.
Are you seeing the AVG? It's here.
Yes.
Are you seeing it?
Yes, Doc.
Good. And you are seeing the composite reliability. That's not what we are looking at. So Funnell and Lacker said that in fact, there are new models now that account for a higher AVG. It says that they recommended that composite reliability should be 6.0 or more, right? This guy here also said 0.70, but for AVG, Funnell and Lacker said that it should be 0.5. So what we have here is what? 0.74, right? It should be greater than 0.5, but this one is 0.749. So what it means that the average variance extracted has passed the test. So that is one. Now, the other thing we want to look at is this. Now, for a construct, for you to achieve a construct validity, this is the prerequisite. The prerequisite is this, that the intercorrelation, in other words, if I pull this variable, do you agree that there are two variables here? PE and then EE. Do we agree?
Yes, no.
Two constructs. Yeah, let me put it that way. But they all have items. Each one has what? 4. So this is what Funnell and Lacker said. Or this is the measure of construct validity. 1, that the intercorrelation, in other words, if I take one of the items from P and then I correlate it to one of the items in EE, if the intercorrelation is less than 0.5, which is the average variance extracted, then there is what we call discriminant validity. Discriminant meaning that the constructs are families. The items, they are families measuring the construct. For instance, there is the Malcolm family and the Boyson family, right? If somebody in the Malcolm family looks very well like another person in the Boysen family, then there's a problem. If there's that resemblance, then there's a problem. So Funnel and Laka is saying that for a construct to be termed as, for you to achieve construct validity, one of the prerequisites is this, that the intercorrelation between the two separate constructs, the items in it, its intercorrelation should be less than the average variance extracted. And here the average variance extracted, the caveat is what? 0.5, but we have gotten 0.7 something, 74 or something. So that is what we are going to use as a measure. Now 2, so now we have discriminant validity. In other words, the members of the family members of Dr. Malcolm are discriminating against the family members of Boysen and vice versa. They don't look alike. And because they don't look alike, it suggests that they don't belong to that family. They belong to their own, family. Then we come to the convergence validity. That is the second layer, which it indicates that for convergent validity, for a validity to be convergent, then now in that same family, the intra-correlation, now among the same family, there is Kojo Malcolm, there is Ebenezer Malcolm. The two of them, if they correlate, if you conduct correlation, their correlation should be higher than the average variance extracted. If it does that, then it means that there is what? Convergence. All right? It means that there is what? Convergence. So for a construct to pass, or items to pass construct validity, there should be what? Discriminant validity, and also there should be convergence validity. So that is why we went for the average variance extracted. I don't know that whether what I've said, it makes sense. Do you get my point? Hello?
Yes, Doc, we get it very well.
Any questions so that we take that from here? I'm going to do the correlation for you too.
Okay, Doc. Doc, please, my name is Isaac Bach. I wanted to ask a question.
Please do.
Yeah. I understand that one of the rules which comes with, or one of the assumptions which comes with like testing of relationship, and then especially if I don't know if we are going to run a regression analysis and all that.
No, we're going to do correlation. Not regression, correlation, please, just to test this. Yeah.
Yes, please. In this case, with the test we are doing, will issues of multicollinearity matter at all in the as one of the assumptions we have to satisfy in doing the analysis we have to do? Because I'm looking at the intercorrelation you've done, and I see that sort of we have some of the items in a particular construct being highly correlated with.
No, we are not there yet. We are not there yet. This is the component, what we call the factor loadings. Okay.
Yes.
It's always most times we consider a factor loadings higher than 30%. Okay.
Yes,
component.
Please.
So we are yet to go into the correlation. So we've set the agenda. The first agenda is that, okay, let's get the component loadings. That's what we've gotten. And then we put them into what the AVG. If it were to be Stata will give us the average variance extracted, and even give us the as it were the intracorrelation for you to see that there's convergent and discriminant validity. Stata will do it straight. Okay. Yes, I want us to go through this process just to explain the theory that we have looked at. Okay, that's what I want us to do. So once this thing makes sense now, so principle 1, we needed the factor loadings. That took us into principal component analysis. Some people call it exploratory factor analysis. I mean, you can give it any name. So that has been done. We just went to Excel, something that has been, a preset formula that has been generated, and you only have to go there. I'll share these things with you when I get your emails, just as I shared that with you the other time. So this one, we just put the figures in and it generates the scores for us. So we know right away that our composite reliability is a certain, our average variance extracted. Please, can someone put this in the chat? It's 0.749. Can we keep that in mind? Okay, so we have that. 0.749. And then we have also the components here. Now, the next thing to do. Now we are going to do a simple correlation in SPSS to establish what Funnell and Lacker had said. So we are going here. We are going to analyze, correlate. Please, can you watch? Can you see? Correlate. Can you see? Hello?
Yes, Doc. So please, you can see.
I think we are very quiet. Please, in our local dialect, we'll ask,
Yes, Doc.
Are we lifting the bar too much? Oh, it's okay.
It's very much okay, Doc.
Right. You have the video, so we can just go through. So we are going to do correlate. So I'm picking, yes, to the 8 items, right? So I've picked them. Let's count if it is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me draw your attention to something that a mistake, probably you are not aware. You see, by default, the correlation, bivariant correlation, bi means more than one. It has chosen Pearson correlation. Have you seen it? Have you seen it? I want response. It's checked.
Yeah.
Now take note, Pearson correlation is for ratio data, not for ordinal data like an Likert scale data.
Okay.
So most times you come here and then you click OK. It will give you a figure. This is where this validity issues start. It will give you a figure. You will not check and then come and report that figure. So if you are a medical doctor, you know what you have done to the patient. That's wrong diagnosis. All right. And then that will lead to something. Now, if you want to do, use Likert scale data to do correlation, then your best bet is the Spearman correlation matrix rather than the Pearson. So okay. Take note of that. And then you have 2-tailed test and 1-tailed test. In another time, we'll deal with Tascal, very intense Tascal issue where the essence of the 2-tailed and the 1-tailed test will come in. So this is what I have, simple. I have not done anything. Let me do that again. I go to analyze, I pick correlate by variant. I have my items here. I move them from here. Let me do it so that you see. And then I just move them here. Remove the Pearson to what? Spearman, that is all. Then I generate my data. So this is what I have. This is what I have. The observation is 207. Now watch this. What is the figure for the average variance extracted? What's the figure for the average variance extracted? The AVG. Hello? Is 0.7. Okay, the AVG.
It's 0.749.
That is it, okay? The AVG. Now, watch something. Because Funnell and Lacker gave a threshold of 0.5, even if you have an AVG that is more than 0.5, you pass the test. But in measuring the convergent and the discriminant validity, most people prefer to still use the 0.5 as the caveat, even though they have a value. It is when their AVG falls below. So this is what happens. Watch this. P against PE1 against PE1 should give us 1 because it's correlating with itself. But PE1 against PE2 is giving us what? 0.33. Have you seen it?
Yes, sir.
733, which is what? Significant. Two-tailed test. Significant. Yes. Now, this is what I want us to do. Somebody should take PE1 and EE1. PE1 and EE1. EE1.
That's 0.700.
Okay. So you see that there is still correlation. There's still what? Intercorrelation. The intercorrelation is high. It's 0.7. Hello?
Hi.
So performance expectancy 1 and effort expectancy 1, they are not discriminating. They behave as if they belong to the same family. True or false?
Yes. True.
So here you would have issues of what? Discriminant validity. Okay. You get it?
Yes, sir.
So if you are doing principal component analysis, most time what happens is that somebody who belongs to one family will be added to the to one other family because the correlation between them, the intercorrelation is what? High. So you see questions somewhere being moved to add to other questions to measure the construct very well. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Okay.
Yes,
because it should discriminate, but it's not discriminating. And you can see a number of them, they all having what? Higher correlation. Okay. You mentioned the multicollinearity issue. Okay. Yeah. Multicollinearity simply means that you have, highly correlated independent variables, whether negatively highly correlated or positively highly correlated. And when that thing happens, it means that if you're doing some sort of regression, the independent variables, their high correlation, it will not help you get the actual impact on the dependent variable. And there are methods to reduce the multicollinearity, but that's not what we are dealing with. That's for another time. So what I'm saying is that should this thing, show P1, P2, P3, P4 discriminated against E1, E2, E4, if we had values lower than 0.5, then would have said that we have achieved the first thing of what? Discriminant validity, right? The second point is that the intra-correlation between P1, P2, P3 should be what? More than 0.5. That has been achieved here. We can see that here. Okay, if you look at that, it means there's convergent validity, but there's no discriminant. So we cannot have construct validity.
Okay.
So construct validity cannot be achieved. You get it? It cannot be achieved in this case. So I'm giving you an example. If it did, then we are going to have a different thing. So what it means is that we better put all this construct together to measure one variable. And these items to measure one variable. Because they are all correlated. Does it make sense? They are all correlated. So that is not there. Let's do one other thing. So this is to demonstrate to you how we measure construct validity. Right?
Yeah.
Discriminant, and then what? Convergent validity. The caveat is the average variance extracted, the AVG. We said variance talks about the dispersion of the data, right? So the average variance extracted then tells us the variance that was captured for, these variables. When you put them together, the amount of variance that was what? Captured. In fact, if you look at what we have done in the principal component analysis, an example is this. We call it total variance explained, where it is telling you that 74.9% can be accounted for the components. Okay, 74.9, which is huge. Okay, so we'll come to that. But this is just to explain the term construct.
Doc, please, a question.
Validity, yes.
Doc, please, with the correlation matrix that you showed, Looking at how they didn't show discriminant validity, assuming one of the items for PE1 was, let's assume PE2 was not highly correlated with the some of the items for EE1, does it mean that for that PE2 item, we wouldn't have to merge it with, assuming we are merging the questions because of the correlation we are seeing, and PE2 is not having the same relationship as the other variables of PE2 have with the EE variables, will we have separated that from the whole thing?
So we create another family. You understand?
Yes.
They are not part of it. They are not measuring. You get it? We create another family for it. If you have 2 or 3 of them that are discriminating, but the others are not discriminating, then it tells you that you have to pull those one that doesn't discriminate and add them to those variables. Okay, those class of people. So we believe that for some reason you belong to this family. You get it? So you go there so that we can measure. Other than that, how could we have measured IQ? You get it? Other than that,
okay,
how could we? Just think about it. I just want us to go deep into this. How would we answer some couple of questions and they are able to tell us that our IQ is 65% with a minimal margin of error? It's because of construct validity.
Okay.
You get it?
Yes,
it's
please.
because of that. So the people sit down and do wild things. So they make sure these things measure up, and a number of tests are done just to ensure that. And that's what we have just done. Now we'll be going to reliability. But before we go to reliability, we are going to use the same data to ensure that. Now, there are different types of reliability. Let's move here. If you don't have any questions here, I can move on. There are different types of reliability. And I'm not going to take you into the conventional one. There are too much of discussions here. We'll leave that for another day. But I just want us to see practically how we can measure reliability. Okay, now the constructs, assuming the constructs were well arranged, we have a very good construct. Performance expectancy, and in most cases, somebody might have about 10 questions for performance expectancy. And then we'll use the principal component analysis to prune it down. So this exercise that we are going to, you move this guy here, move that one here, and then you're able to get a very good construct, right? Now, when you get it, then the process of even measuring that good construct, one of the things you have to do is to do a reliability test. That this construct that you have gotten, if we put in data, will they give us that kind of consistency in the results? And to do that, one of the easiest way to do that is to use the Chromeback Alpha. Neil Chromeback, that guy who came up with Chromeback Alpha, was supposed to bring Chromeback Beta, but could not come with it. So we are using this Alpha, all right? Yes, that's what it is. If you read about it, his next research was to do Beta, but landed on Chromeback Alpha. And that is what we have used over the period, to do our test. Now, reliability has to do with the quality of measurement. And in its everyday sense, reliability is the consistency or repeatability of your measures. I just want to have some 5 minutes discussion. Guys, let's understand this thing very well. Without reliability, okay, we could not test theories. Without reliability, that's how serious the concept of reliability is. Without it, we cannot test theories. Let's ask how theories emerge. These qualitative guys that we don't have so much respect for, that we think that the quantitative guys are very solid. They begin to conceptualize. They use inductive research, collect data, formulate concepts, models, and all that. Think about it. Porter's 5 forces. How did they start? It was Michael Porter who was conceptualizing. He was theorizing. And in theorizing, all you do is you pick some concepts And you begin to establish, draw some relationship just to make sure those concepts, those relationships can be tested. So he came up with Porter's 5 forces, and then said that there are new entrants who will come into the market. He talked about, the suppliers, the bargaining power of their substitutes, and then you have those who are customers, our bargaining power. Brought all these things and then put in the middle that the level of competitiveness. So it's used to measure the competitiveness of the market. And if anybody, Dr. Malcolm is a strategist, he will tell you, if any business wants to go in, you want to know how competitive the market, what is the entry level? I mean, has it got to do with high cost? What's the switching cost if a customer wants to switch and all that? So they came out with this concept and then just leave it there. They just left it there. And then these quantitative guys picked it, used those variables in the console, developed a questionnaire, measured, went through trials, what pilot tests, and then make sure that everything was okay. And administered it to a wider population. And then when the response came and they did the analysis, they were able to establish some trends. Now, that instrument, which is the questionnaire, was used and was applied in somewhere, another jurisdiction. And then they tested it. And then it was consistent. And then they tested it somewhere. Over time, that model was used, and now it became a theory. That is the transition of what the kind of the roadmap to theory building. That's what they did. So theories are actually built by these qualitative guys. They do all those things. Do you get it? So without reliability, we cannot test theories. And that's how serious reliability is. And that's how you have to take it serious. An instrument might be faulty. It might lack validity, but that fault will present some consistent data to show you that even though it's faulty, the results are consistent. And like I said yesterday, an instrument can be invalid by what results are reliable. But every instrument that is valid comes with what reliable results. Okay, so that's what is it. So one of the tools that we use in measuring validity, reliability, is Chromeback Alpha. There are others that we use, but Chromeback Alpha has over the period stood out to be one of the preferred instruments. So I want us to look at that. So with the same data, we are going to measure the validity using Chromeback Alpha. So let's move, and you can do this yourself. You can pick any data set and try this by yourself. I mean, it wouldn't hurt a fly. I mean, go to Spss and then do this thing. So we go to analyze. This time we are going to scale. The first one was dimension reduction. This one is scale. And then we have reliability analysis. We click here. Now, assuming we were able to pass the average variance extracted, assuming, then the construct, we didn't have to do anything with it. 4.4, it measures. I'm not going to put all together. I'm going to put the items that measures performance expectancy and then that of what effort expectancy. What some of us, the students, will do, the mistakes we commit is that when they say reliability, we pick everything here, select all, we push it in, and then we get a Chromeback Alpha and we say it is reliable. If you are dealing with constructs that are predicting certain variables, you need to be very careful. And we are going to do that now. So I'm going to pick what? Performance expectancy 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is what I'm going to pick. And I'm moving it here. Then I'm going to statistics. Now watch here. Model is Chromeback Alpha. There is what? Split half what? reliability, there is what? The Gutmann validity, there's the parallel validity, and then the strict parallel validity. These are all type of validity, right? You can see Chromeback Alpha is checked, right? Let me see if somebody is saying something. Thank you, lawyer. So that is it. Now let's look at this. I click on statistics. Two things you should bear in mind. We were going to select the item and then scale if item is deleted. This is a benchmark to help us improve on the reliability, right? In other words, which of the questions items that when I delete, it will improve the reliability. There are a number of things you can do, correlation, covariance. We are not into that now. The summaries, the means, and the other thing, we are not into this simple test. I click continue and I click OK. So this, look at what we have here. So it says, it starts a reliability test. It says Chromeback Alpha is what? 0.917. For a number of items, 4.917. Chromeback Alpha, new Chromeback, had indicated that a Chromeback Alpha of 0.7 and more is deemed as what? Is deemed as good. That established that there is internal consistency with the results. But watch this. So we've done this. If we go down, you see the essence of the item if deleted. If you go here, please, who can read what we have here? I just want to see that you're part of what we are doing. Who can read what we have here? Who can read total item statistics? Can you read the Chromeback Alpha item if deleted? Can someone read that for us?
Yes, Doc. For P1, it is 0.885. Then for P2, it is 0.890. P3, it is 0.877. Then P4 is 0.916.
Now watch this. It's saying that this is the item. It says that if you want to improve the validity and the reliability, if you delete PE1, instead of you getting a Chromeback Alpha of 917, you will get what? 885, right? So you'll be making it worse. In some instances, they will tell you that there is an item that has a low Chromeback Alpha, all right? And when you delete it, it will rather improve what? The results. So when you're doing Chromeback Alpha, always check the item, delete if item, item if deleted, alpha if item is deleted. That gives you a room to improve on your Chromeback Alpha. For this one, it's saying that a Chromeback Alpha of 917 is appropriate. Okay, so we are good to go. So you report that reliability analysis was done using the Chromeback Alpha, and the Chromeback sets or contend that the Chromeback Alpha of 0.7 is deemed what? Appropriate. The study recorded a Chromeback Alpha of 0.197, indicating that there was what? Internal consistency of the items that were used, you understand, to measure the construct. So we don't have any violation of the reliability measures. So you're good to go. Now, if you do that, and whoever is looking at your thesis and sees that you have a high reliability, then we can place some sort of trust, okay, in the findings that you have had. Okay, the findings that you have churned out. Then we can place that trust on it. And that thing is very, very important. There's a simple thing that we could do. Take any data set, okay, and then play with some of these things. You will see sense in it. You will see that, no, these guys are making a lot of sense, okay? You will see other variables. Let me pick another one. Effort expectancy. We pick this one, effort. Effort expectancy, let's see. You will see that at a point in time, some of them will be asking you to drop sum of the variables. So this one is also 4. Now watch, this one also has a high correlation, okay? 0.948. And then you don't have any motivation to delete any of them because what you have here is higher than what we have here. Let me pick another one. I just want to get one of them that has a Chromeback Alpha that is a low value. Let me see if I can talk about facilitating conditions. Okay, this one. Oh no. Facilitating conditions. Okay, let me F1 to F4. Let's look at this. So let's watch this. So this one is 0. Can someone read this for me? 0.1. Please, if you can see what I'm doing, just type yes in the chat. I just want to, because what we are doing is practical. I just want us to, follow. Please, what is it? Hello, what's the value? Hello. Hello.
0.684.
0.684. Now, when we come here, watch this. They are saying that when we delete FC1, have you seen it?
Yes, Doc.
Yes.
The Chromeback Alpha will jump to where?
0.927.
Let's assume that they are lying. So let's go and drop that one. So I'm going to drop this one. It means I'm taking this from the construct. Let's see. What do we have?
0.927.
So you see how you can use this to improve. What it means is that that question should be taken off, right? But of course, you had 0.6 something. Somebody might consider to, include it because some other people think that the Chromeback Alpha, when you pass 50%, is good. Others think that 70% is also good. So some peg it at 80%, 70% and above. But this one is giving you a Chromeback Alpha of 9.27. So if I were you, I'll delete it. I'll take it out of. So now I have only 3 constructs that I'm using to measure what? The Chromeback Alpha, right? So that explains this. Does this make sense? Does this make sense?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc, it does.
All right,
But
so
Doc,
that's
please,
about, yeah, hello, yeah, go ahead.
Please, in case we reduce it, and in which case we have only 3 items measuring that construct, doesn't that make it too small? As in, like, won't we be queried in terms of a supervisor saying that we have only 3 questions measuring a certain construct? Is it not too small?
It depends on how you want to look at it. Assuming you have, you started with 10 constructs, right?
Yes, Doc.
And then you have reduced it to 3. It rather means that you have done a rigorous work, isn't it?
Yes, please.
It doesn't mean, or you may want to, at that point in time, you cannot go to the field.
Yes.
And construct another question, put them in, collect all the data. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, please.
So that is why, to reduce some of these things, if you do this for a very long time, you would appreciate that. I think Dr. Adam is here. Is Dr. Adam here? Dr. Adam, are you here? Is he here? I would have, when Dr. Adam was doing his, working on his questionnaire, at a point in time, I told him that, we were looking at how to structure it. And I was telling him that when he's done, he's going to get a Chromeback Alpha value of maybe 0.7 and above. So when he collected the data, he did a pilot study, he got that. He was asking whether I was a magician. I said, it's not a matter of magician. If you do this over time, okay, if a mechanic who is very experienced takes your car and tells you that he's done the alignment, he has fixed something, and go, the alignment will be okay. If you go, you are definitely going to have it okay. So over time, you would know how to structure your questions, because if somebody have answered a one question item that yes, and there is a follow-up question, which when he has said yes, he cannot say no to that one, and the person says no, then it means that there's a problem. Do you get my point? And this reliability, look at these things at our blind sites. And this is what they've used, I mean, to develop some of these things, which makes it very exciting. Okay, so we just have to look at this. And I want to skip this, maybe another time we can talk about the complexities. There's a theory called the true score theory. Please read on that. I'm going to share this with you. It's very interesting. It hinges on reliability, how you can look at what we call random error and systematic error, and how they can be removed from your reliability measure, so you don't create problems for yourself. Okay, sometimes we need to educate our respondents. So that's why in research, if you are doing a self-administered questionnaire, it makes a lot more sense, because if somebody wants to take something, you can explain to the person why he has to do that. Okay, and if we do the Google Forms and we send to them and we have not asked the questions well, we'll not get the responses that we need. So there are other types of reliability, the inter-rater and inter-observer reliability, the parallel form. You saw the parallel form there, and the test retest reliability. Okay, this normally is around this pilot test. We test and then we retest. Then we have the internal consistency reliability and many other of these things. I want to quickly switch to the last part. I've given some examples of these reliability and how you can go about it. This is an extensive PowerPoint, even though there are points, you have more data in here. So I'll send it to you. I want us to crown our discussion today with something very, very important, which is establishing gap in research, what we call problem statements. And before I start, I just want, if Dr. Malcolm, maybe if you want to throw more light on common mistakes that students do when it comes to establishing a problem, so that we can take it out from here. Dean Dr. Malcolm, are you there? He has reviewed a number of PhD theses, so he can speak to that. So I mean, at any point in time, I'll draw his attention to it. Okay, so most times in research, we are expected to establish what we call the problem statement. And a problem statement is the areas in the topic that you would want to describe, and then further justify to establish what a gap. And I have looked at this from three perspectives. I saw this also in Capella University in the US, their thesis guide, where they are strict on you establishing one of these three gaps. Okay, so we have the theoretical gap, existing or new theory. We have a methodological gap. You're looking at the approach, design, analysis. And then we have the empirical gap, which is the policy and the practice. Okay, so the first thing is that if you are using a theory, in the case of what we are doing, we are using the you thought to theory. Is there any theoretical gap? A theoretical gap means that has the theory been applied in that area of the study to understand the relationship between those constructs in that theory? Has it been applied? That is one question we need to ask, and very, very important. If it has not been applied there, or some of the variables have been applied, but others in the theory, the construct, have not been applied, then you have identified what a theoretical gap. And this can be done only through literature review. When you have maybe papers in the social sciences, we want to look at papers for the past, 5 years. We don't want to go more. So 5 years is okay. If it is a physical science, we don't look for 5 years, because 5 years, a number of things would have happened, okay? But for social sciences, it's accepted. And they want you to use current, literature. So if you are doing 5 years, then from 2022 down, you are looking at maybe 2017 up to date, and you are looking at papers that have current papers that have used, this theory. The first bet you can do is to, in Google, search with the country, that theme with the country, to see papers that have been done, current papers in Ghana. All right. Then you can look at the African continent. You can be specific in Nigeria and all. Take current papers. Go to, Science Direct. Go into other, databases, and then find out your channel. Academic.edu, ResearchGates are all sites that you can go. Then get these papers. And most of the time, what I say is that if they are current papers, you can choose about 5 or 6 of them, which are, related to your study, okay? And then look at the fact that they have used that theory, but which sector of the economy did they use? That is very important. Where did they use? So, for instance, this guy, the model I showed to you, the Untold theory, we just found out that, through empirical review, that it has not been applied in measuring employees' behavioral intentions. All studies that have been done, even in Africa, studies have not looked at employees. Some people say employees, then they pick students. We were able to fish all out. So the theoretical gap we felt was that none of the literature we reviewed, okay, had used the Untold theory to understand employees' behavioral intentions to bring your own device, okay, specifically in Ghana and in the sub-region. That's what we did. So that becomes what? A gap. And that gap, once we are applying it here, the results are going to be what? Different. And I'm going to show you that in the literature that was reviewed. And then we come to what? The methods. There are a number of methods: research approach, research design, and approach. We are talking about what? Qualitative, quantitative, mixed. So how many mixed studies have been done on this study? How many quantitative techniques have been used for this study using the theory, this theory? And how many mixed study, quantitative, qualitative mixed study? And if they use quantitative, what kind of quantitative design did they use? You want to know. All right, there are tools. We realize some people use regression, multiple regression. Some use logic regression, multinomial regression. Others use a structural equation model, but was not on employees, for students. So this guy, this is what he did. He chose the Untold theory to understand employees' behavioral intentions in what Ghana, one gap, because at the end of the study, there will be a study that has been done in Ghana using Untold to understand the Ghanaian story. So the theory has been extended to the region of Ghana. So research is all these gaps is to extend theories and also get empirical evidence to back them. Because other jurisdictions, they did it and the results were consistent, right? So that was done. Then the methods, we also did that. He did a correlational study. There was a lot of correlational studies, but they didn't use structural equation model. Okay, so he used structural equation modeling specifically for this theory. And then when that was done, we moved towards the empirical part. And look at how this thing works out. Once a theory that has not been applied in a certain setting have been used, and a certain method that was not used to support that theory to do the analysis have been used, you are definitely going to get findings that are exclusive to that environment. True or false? You are definitely going to do that, because those findings are based on a theory that has not been applied, and they are based on a method that has not been specifically applied to that particular theory. So you would get that. So this is what people do. Some people try to establish one gap. That's a theoretical gap. It's accepted. But I would always in research go for what? X. I'll go for X. The X is what they considering all the three. Some people do AC, and they will do A, or they will do C. They will do empirical methods. It's accepted. But try as much as possible to get a wider reach. You go for what? X. X means that we are looking at theoretical gap, empirical gap, and the methodological what gap. And I want to, in view of that, I want to show you something. A paper that was done as a proposal for a student in Brunel University, which received some sort of good commendation. In fact, some institution they put the problem statement and the introduction together when you're writing your proposal. So this guy was assessing the effectiveness of trade unions, a mechanism of voice for employees in the port and maritime sector of Ghana. Okay, employees' voice. So this is his proposal, but let's go and see. I want us to look at something. The problem statement was part of the introduction. There was no, you see, we've written background of the problem instead of saying introduction and then. So I want to take you to where the guy established the gap. Okay, so that's where it starts. Can I have someone to read this for us? Hello?
Hello, Doc.
Yeah.
Previous literature on employee voice have focused on management reputation, reconstructing process, typologies, and measurement definitions, designing from employee voice, firm innovation in small and medium firms, employee work engagement, abusive supervision and engagement, and organizational effectiveness, among others. These studies were conducted in Norwegian, Swiss, South Africa, Nigeria, UK, European firms, Chinese firms, Pakistan, and India. Again, these studies predominantly used either qualitative or quantitative methods and the social exchange theory as their theoretical framework. The current study identifies theoretical, methodological, and empirical gaps. Theoretically, the social exchange theory has not been extended to the port and maritime sector to understand the effectiveness of employees' voice in decision-making. Empirically, there appears to be little or no literature on the effectiveness of employee voice in the trade unions in the port and maritime industry. The current study extends the theoretical boundaries of the social exchange theory to understand its implications on the port and maritime sector in Ghana. Methodologically, most studies used either qualitative or quantitative approach. None of the papers reviewed so far used a mixed method approach to understand views of the experts and larger stakeholders in the industry to drive policy in the decision-making process. The current study adopts an exploratory sequential mixed method to compensate for the limitations of the quantitative and qualitative methods used in previous studies, and also to build synergy through the triangulation of findings to drive managerial decisions in the port and maritime industry.
So how do you say this?
Yes, Doc. So it seems he was very, very much able to, first of all, tell what has been done by other researchers, especially including which theory they used and where they used it. But then he was able to also tell that when it comes to the sector where he's doing the study, such a theory, which is the social exchange theory, has not been used. And so he wants to extend it to that sector to sort of test how it would also fare in that sector. And then also when it came to the methods, he did not just mention the method he was going to use, but he also mentioned why he was going to use it.
Why?
And
I like the bit that you get this. Why? Why? Go ahead.
Yes, Doc. And so in terms of like the why and what it will end up doing, that is extend policy making, which would be quite different from what the other studies have been able to achieve.
Now, when you do this, when you write this way, or you get papers, and each of them you see current studies, 2019, 2020, 2017, 2018. Are you saying they are all there? All right.
Yes, Doc.
Very solid. Now, when he was making that assumption of previous literature, you can count the number of papers that he did here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right.
Yes, Doc.
Which are current studies. Okay.
Yes.
So it went, and then the supervisor said that he has seen proposal, but he has not seen, a proposal where these three gaps have been fused together in a manner. So, he thought that the guy had read very well to be able to see this. Okay. And if you write a proposal like this and you're able to come out of it, of course, if you collect the data and you do a good work, the problem has articulated the various aspects of what the topic, and that's what the guy did. The topic, employee voice, he picked them one by one. First paragraph talks about an overview of the concept of employee voice. The second paragraph talks about for trade unions. He picks the variables one by one and do justice to it. Do you understand? And then now talk about what previous studies have done. So that is what you do. If you want to make sure that these variables are aligned very well with the problem, and then we go to areas where we want to discuss this thing, and then also establish the literature gap. If you do that, then hey, you are good to go. Let me just show you the last 10 as that of the one I showed to you, the problem statement, which is also very packed. Okay, I would not, it's a lot to read through, but this is what this guy did for the problem statement. He talked about the technology, talked about what previous studies have done, the organization, adoption, the benefits, right? And then come to literature on consumer market on BOYOD. Is describing what the problem literature, what literature has shown specific to what these variables. He did that. All right. And a lot of literature. It is the problem statement that articulates some of these things. Talks about employee have high participation in BOYOD, and then successful adoption, what people have gotten out of it. Then the literature on BOYOD adoption evaluated the attitude of employees towards adoption, talks about all, and it says that there was limited empirical research on factors that directly influence employees' intention to participate in the program. He anchors the problem with this study that there is limited literature. And he says the closest studies on employees' intentions to participate in BOYOD use them and you taught, not you taught too, as theoretical framework, but students, not employees, were the research participants. Okay. Then he talks about other guys, what they have done. And then finally says the broad literature gaps identified were the factors that directly influence current employees' intentions to participate in the BOYOD program in the workplace. Then now talks about theoretically what they will do, empirically. and then methodologically. All right. So he anchors this thing very well. Yeah.
Doc, please, may we have this problem statement when we are sending the recording?
Okay.
Only the problem statement.
That's okay. I'll send it to him. I'll send it to him. So we could use this as a model, right? And then work it out. It's going to help us very well. And of course, this guy was one of the students that had very high mark. The comments that came was what I heard. What he sent to me was that the panel told him that that was an excellent work, but students like him is why they teach. It's a student like you is why we teach. In other words, he was able to, and he has finished his work ahead of time, right? His PhD ahead of time. I don't need to disclose who that person is, but Dean knows that person. He has done that, okay? Due to some sort of mentorship we gave that person and trying to make sure the project that he did was very tight, that you don't have anywhere to criticize, okay? Everything has been supported. Everything we did has been supported. The findings, the discussion, amazing, okay? The discussion, the gaps, and then the implication of the study to theory and practice. This guy, let me show you that one briefly before we draw the curtains down. They've published the work. It's already in, it's being sold. I don't know. He did the work, and when they publish it, they are selling it. So you could go online and then do that. But then we can give you the asset. He says something here which was very instructive. Can someone read for us? So we are almost done. Can someone read for us?
Implications for theory and practice. The implications of the current study for theory and practice are related to identified research problems.
Did you get that? No, wait. Yes. Do you see what the guy did?
Yes, please.
What does it mean? What is he trying to do? Any thoughts? Any thoughts about it? What is he trying to do? We are all learning.
It seems he was trying to sort of build based on the findings of his study.
Yeah.
He's trying to link that to the problem statement, like the problem he identified from the beginning of the study.
Yeah. So I mean, you are not far from the truth. So yeah. He knew that there was a problem that his research has addressed. Now, in order to make sure that this study is relevant to the advancement of theory, and also that the findings can help organizations and industry to implement in order to solve this problem, he just tied the implication of the study to the research problem, which many people don't do. So some of the feedback that came from the panel members, and they said, this is the first time I've seen somebody revisit the problem, okay, in the implication of the study. You take, I can challenge you, take about 10 or 20, thesis or even publications, even now, and check if they are talking about implication of the study, if it is tied to the problem. It is not done. So the panel learned something new, okay, which was very good. Please go ahead.
Yeah. It was noted that most research on BYOD was found in other disciplines rather than employees in the workplace. Based on the researchers' search of the literature, none of the studies needed to focus on employees in the working class between 18 and 46 years in the formal sector. Also, none of the studies had used the Untold tool to understand the Ghanaian case relative to employees in the working class. From this perspective, it was clear that there were literature gaps theoretically, empirically, and methodically. Theoretically, this study brings an understanding of the Untold 2 framework in the context of the employees in Ghana and employees in the former working class. The implication is that the operational model with the three constructs, that's PE, EE, and AT, has become the ideal model to predict BI. For that matter, researchers have a guide to follow in extending this model to other jurisdictions.
You get a point?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at the second one. Yeah.
The empirical findings from the current study contribute to the ongoing debate in adopting BYOD in the sub-region in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even though some organizations adopted BYOD to curtail the spread of the virus and comply with protocol established by government, no policy guide guided most organizations in adopting the BYOD strategy. Therefore, the findings from this current study will help managers or organizations in Ghana and the sub-region focus on the critical constructs as first steps in implementing BYOD in the formal sectors. On the other hand, the employees will also understand their role relative to performance expectancy, effort expectancy, and habits needed to implement BYOD. It is also instructive to note that the non-predictability of the other constructs, SI, FC, HM, PV, and H, presents an opportunity for further research to ascertain the reason for the non-prediction. Furthermore, this also extends the debate of the contrasting findings on these predictors on moderators. Dog, this is very solid.
All right. All right. So, guys, we need to lift our level to a certain level. I mean, we need to upgrade what we've been doing to the next level. All right. Like I told you, I took the pains to examine almost 200 papers just to understand trends, because I didn't want a situation to be that academic that I have published a number of papers, which is good scholarships, but I sit on a panel and then somebody comes and then shows something and I'm not able to explain. All right. I have a limitation on that. So I sought to do that first, and then I'll zoom into serious publication. So I have an understanding of what the whole research is about. And I think that we should also cultivate that same habit. I don't claim to be an epitome of knowledge. I share, I listen to other people, and I think that if we continue to, I mean, there's no end to learning. So if we continue to read and also challenge ourselves, we should be able to get to the top, I mean, where we want to get to. And we can sit anywhere, in a panel, anywhere, and talk freely because we understand. The knowledge is there. So we don't have to, I mean, belabor it. So let me Dean Malcolm, if you are around now, can I have your concluding remark? Dean Malcolm. Hello. Let me just prompt him.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Doc, sorry, I have to also attend another meeting. Sorry for that.
I know.
But I was listening at the background.
I know.
Yeah. And I listened to part of this thing. I'll get the recorded version.
Okay.
But you've actually delved into, I mean, the issue with reliability and validity, but based on what I'm seeing on the screen. And also delve into the research gap where you touch on the key elements when you are looking at a gap in research, which are in place. I'll take time to listen to the recorded video and then get back to you with regards to my feedback.
All right.
Kudos for that.
All right, sir.
Kudos.
So thank you, guys. You can still drop, if you were not here yesterday, you can still drop your email. There are some emails that bounce back. So if you can send it to me so we can share the recorded. You are the reason why we did what we have done. And I want to thank you for your time, the quality time you spent for this. Periodically, we'll be doing this. We'll be going more into, the actual doing rather than talking about it. So if we pick problem statement, for instance, we'll write it here ourselves. We'll pick the literature and write it ourselves so that you can learn how to use some of these things. You realize that the authors that were using very technical language. I don't know whether you realize it, very technical research language in constructing their problem statement. And once you do that, then you make your work very crisp. It's very difficult to punch holes in it. And I want to thank you for your time. These 2 days have been very, very good. And I have learned a lot of things, even teaching. And I think that, and I want to thank the Malcolm for, with all the hard schedules, decided to join us and then also share his thoughts. To let you know,